Welcome back to Carneades.org. Today we're going to be continuing with Better a Witty Fool. This is going to be a critique of presuppositionalism. In this video we're going to be looking at Pyrrho of Elis and his views and how they can contrast with presuppositionalism, how they can offer an alternative to presuppositionalism, and how we can kind of reinforce or substantiate one of those points along the flowchart that presuppositionalism is going to claim isn't actually a position you can take. So, first off, who was Pyrrho? Well, Pyrrho lived in ancient Greece from around 365 to 275 BCE. He was the founder of Pyrrhonism and the father of skepticism. Even if the skeptics that came after disagreed with Pyrrho, he is one of the people that often they reference, or they will reference someone that used or got their information from Pyrrho. He's one of the first recorded skeptics that we really have down. It's important to note that Pyrrho himself, like Socrates, didn't write anything. It's his follower, Timon of Athens, that copied much of what he did down. But the problem is we only have access to this through a 2nd century bishop quoting a 1st century philosopher that references Timon's work. The quote that's there, which is known as the Aristocles quote, is controversial, it's apocryphal. You can look it up if you're curious, and it'll give you some information, but it's especially controversial because there's debate around the translation of some very important specific words that would define Pyrrho's position in one way or another. The important point, however, is that Pyrrho was pretty important, and many philosophers to follow have referenced and used his work. So, the important and salient point for moving forward is going to be that there's an important difference between academic and Pyrrhonian skepticism. For Pyrrho, his followers didn't make any assertions about the possibility of knowledge. They didn't say knowledge is possible or knowledge is impossible. They just didn't make assertions. They didn't make claims. They didn't have beliefs. Whereas the academic skeptic asserted that knowledge is impossible. They had kind of the negatively dogmatic view about the possibility of knowledge. What we're going to be dealing with, of course, right now, is Pyrrho's view. So, we have a couple concepts we want to define in order to understand this. Epoche is suspending judgment on the truth value of propositions. The goal, kind of this skeptical framework, is to end up with arguments that are equally opposing, that come to a head and lead you to suspend judgment on any proposition. And ataraxia is kind of that state of tranquility that one reaches upon kind of becoming a skeptical sage and suspending judgment on all of your beliefs. Basically, there are 3 possibilities one can take as to the possibility of knowledge. Either knowledge is possible, knowledge is impossible, or we don't know if knowledge is impossible or not. The follower of Pyrrho takes the third. Sextus Empiricus did much to explain and categorize the views of various Pyrrhonists that came after Pyrrho in his outlines of Pyrrhonism and other texts. So if you're looking for more interesting thoughts on Pyrrho or his viewpoints, check out Sextus Empiricus. It's much more extant than Pyrrho's original writings or Pyrrho's original ideas. So, when faced with the question of, does absolute truth exist, not exist, you don't know, or you don't care, Pyrrho would take the third option, saying he doesn't know if absolute truth exists. And then when faced with the question, either you know this claim, or you know that it's false, he would say, doesn't seem to me that that's the case. I don't know this claim one way or another. I don't know if absolute truth exists, and I don't even know if that statement is true. I don't have to know that it's true or know that it's false. So Pyrrho can sit at this viewpoint and seem to stay there, with the presuppositionalist railing and screaming and being frustrated, but simply saying, I don't know if absolute truth exists, and saying, I don't know whether or not I know that absolute truth exists, is a substantial and real position in philosophy. Pyrrho's objection would go as follows. It's not the case that either we must know something to be true or we must know it to be false, kind of a trick that the presuppositionalist uses a lot. In fact, I don't know if there are an odd number of life forms alive right now, nor do I know that it is not the case that there are an odd number of life forms alive right now. I don't know one way or the other. So it's possible for me to not know something and not know whether or not I know something. One need not take a position on whether or not they know the claim that they don't know that absolute truth exists. The claim may be true without them knowing it or even believing it. But the truth of the claim doesn't terribly bear on the fact that they may or may not believe it. If they lack belief about it, it doesn't matter if it's true because they won't know it. One may lack beliefs without believing one lacks beliefs, and one may lack knowledge without knowing that one lacks knowledge. Therefore, one could sit at this point of the flowchart without going down the presuppositionalist rabbit hole and staying a good skeptic. This is where Pyrrho would object. This is probably one of the main points that I would object. And all of the versions of kind of this, well, either this is true or false, a similar objection will work on them. That was Pyrrho versus presuppositionalism. Next up is Thomas Kuhn, followed by Agrippa, Bertrand Russell, Saul Kripke, Quine Goodman, Aristotle, Lewis Carroll, and finally, Carneades. Watch this video and more at Carneades.org, and stay skeptical, everybody.